So let's be real clear about one thing. There is no actual crisis here. This is entirely a crisis of their making if it occurs. Democrats believe in paying America's bills. So the American people can rest assured the Democrats will stick together on this.
All politics all the time. That was President Biden yesterday claiming that the national deficit is not an actual crisis, as the United States is facing $31.5 trillion in overall debt. Joining us right now is North Carolina Senator Ted Budd. He's a member of the Senate Armed Services, Small Business and Commerce and Science and Transportation Committees. Senator, your thoughts on this showdown that's about to take place on the debt? And President Biden seems fine, very comfortable with it.
Well, look, Maria, we need to pay our bills, of course. We always pay the national credit card, but we need to deal with some spending problems first. You know, when you talk to folks in all 100 counties back in North Carolina, they realize that this inflation is largely driven by Biden's economic policies, which is way too much government spending, which is lowering the value of their dollars and making it harder on their everyday lives. Yeah. So, yes, we have real problems, Maria.
Well, the Senate is voting to kill the Biden administration's ESG investment rule. That rule encourages private retirement plan fiduciaries to consider environment, social, and governance factors when making an investment decision. The move would impact over 150 million Americans, and the White House is warning that Biden will veto the bill. What is the impact of such a decision?
Maria, this is a bipartisan bill. I mean, we got people from both parties that are supporting this, and Biden is completely on this leftist woke agenda that is hurting retirees. I believe that we should have, and it seems like in a bipartisan agreement here in the U.S. Senate, we believe that retirees should have more money in their pockets, more money in their accounts, and Biden seems to be against that. He's hurting folks back in North Carolina and those that are about to retire, those who already have retired, in sake of this woke socialist agenda.
Todd Pyro.
Senator Budd, proponents of ESG say eventually it will turn out to be more profitable than non-ESG. So basically, fiduciaries have an obligation to go with ESGs. Do you buy that argument that, hey, at some point it will be profitable down the line?
No, essentially it's a double capture, because if you want to be a great investor, you have to be, you can't be bad on the environment. You can't be bad on social and government issue or governance issues. So that's already built into what investors are looking for, because you can't be bad at those things. This essentially changes from economic returns to social returns, and that doesn't pay the bills when it comes to retirees.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. For all of those investors who missed oil, they blew it. Last year, oil stocks were the best performers. The year before, oil stocks were the best performers, yeah. Mark. And, you know, you've got some of these wind and, climate change industries failing when it comes to stock market performance.
You do. And then you look at these ESG funds overall. And these ESG funds remind me of the financial crisis, when they were taking all that crap debt, packaging it together and rubber stamping it with AAA. Remember that? And remember how that all turned out. Now you're having the same thing happen, where they're taking these funds and they're just rubber stamping them with ESG, when it turns out a lot of them aren't ESG at all. So, it's a, what was the book back in the day? The Big Short. Yeah. There may be a new book coming out called The Big Lie as it relates to ESG investing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The big windmill, the big solar farm.
There you go. Exactly. I also am hearing that some of these wind companies are getting slammed with lawsuits because there's actual damage, and they're going to the insurance companies and wanting insurance. We could see an issue with some of these wind companies. I was just told this the other day. But, Senator, I want to get to your grilling of the president's nominee for FAA administrator, Phil Washington, yesterday. You asked him several aviation policy questions that he was not able to answer. Meanwhile, Florida Congressman Michael Waltz and a group of GOP lawmakers are joining calls for Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg to resign. Senator, what's the story with Biden's nominees? Are they not equipped for the positions that he's putting them up for?
No, when you look to Phil Washington, first of all, I want to acknowledge the fact that he's served our country in uniform, and we certainly appreciate that. But he's really the wrong nominee for what we need here in the FAA. The number one priority there, it's safety, and he seems to not understand aviation when he's up for the position of director of the Federal Aviation Administration. It's just a complete mismatch, and I was able to call that out yesterday and see that he really doesn't understand aviation.
And what about the transportation secretary, Senator? This is the third major issue where Pete Buttigieg was missing in action. Should he resign?
Well, he needs to focus on the job that he has, not on the job that he wants. We see that he's clearly using it as a platform for something else. While we've got rail problems, I mean, this man is literally asleep at the switch when we've got major catastrophes in East Palestine, Ohio. We've got near misses, near fatalities and runways as recent as 2 days ago in Boston. The American people need somebody that's looking after their safety when it comes to aviation and rail safety and all transportation, not somebody who's campaigning for another job.
So do you have any background in terms of what happened with the train derailment in East Palestine?
No, but I've got a great colleague who's looking at this in J.D. Vance and in Ohio. And look, this is it hurts that neighborhood. It hurts that part of the state. And we're all concerned because rail is so important to my state of North Carolina and our whole country.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that safety is number one when it comes to not just freight rail, but passenger rail as well, and people on the road and in the air with aviation.
Well, Joe Borelli, it was stunning when Pete Buttigieg walking around and a reporter's asking him, are you going to go? Are you going to go to East Palestine? He says, listen, I'm on private time right now.
His attitude towards the American public has been disgraceful. And just a few months ago, he was seen as this next generation Democrat, the person that take the Democrats into the next decade, perhaps. Now, I guess the question I have for the senator is he actually a liability for the president's own reelection efforts? He went from the top of the ticket to perhaps a dead weight.
Well, it seems so. And again, I think folks are saying, like, look, if you're going to be in that job, do that job. Make sure we're safe. Make sure there's not increasing amount of derailments. Make sure that you put up good nominees for the FAA and look after the American people. Do the job that you have. That's what they want for all of us, whether in your U.S. Senate or whether you're in the Transportation Department.
Senator, thanks very much for being here. We'll be watching your work.